In the heart of the state-of-the-art, at the dawn of the next stage in entertainment, you found no proscenium.
You have indeed found no proscenium, the voice of everything immersive. I'm your host, Noah Nelson, and welcome to episode 408 of our ongoing exploration of the immersive cosmos. This week, an old-fashioned doubleheader as we check in on two very different events arriving in Southern California. First up, Carey Lovelace, founder of Visions 2030, will be on hand to talk about Earth Edition, a festival of eco-consciousness, which is unfolding on the campus of CalArts in Valencia right now, and features some of the same tech that is being used in the Sphere, which is about to launch in Las Vegas. Then, Sarah Mann of Madmann's Playground and performer and poet Katie Rediger join us to talk about Van Helsing's Dracula, their upcoming collaboration here in the Southland, which mixes circus arts and dining and turns the Dracula story on its head. Environmentalism and vampires. We contain multitudes. On the site this week, you'll find a whole lot, including reports from the Edinburgh and Philadelphia Fringe festivals, our latest Immersive 5, which features guest Katie Rediger, and an updated call sheet. Now, EI this week is taking a break this week as we adjust to a new schedule. That new schedule's my new schedule. More on that at the end of the show. But we will be back next week along with what is going to be a pretty robust return of the review rundown, more from Edinburgh, and I'm sure a few surprises that I don't know about yet, although hopefully not too many because I'm running out of time to do things. Sometimes that's how it goes. And it goes because of our incredible Patreon backers. And this week we have one new backer to crow about, Tess Howsam, who is bringing our current backer total up to 427. Our goal for spooky season is to hit the 450 backer milestone. We need 23 more backers this season at the $5 level to make sure we keep the lights on and get us set to build bigger, better, and smarter in 2024. For those who have already gone to patreon.com/noproscenium and shown your support, the best way to help is to share the podcast or one of the articles you found useful, like the call sheet, which lists professional opportunities in immersive on your social media platform of choice. We are always No Proscenium, except on Insta and on Threads, which we are still on, where we are No_Proscenium. You know where you won't find us anymore? X, because I'm done with it. As always, big thanks to our sustaining backers, Samuel Mustry, Chris Woolman, Samantha Davison, Eric Shamlin, Elaine, Daryl, John Boulette, Cameo Wood, Jay Bushman, Jerome Joseph Gentis, Kurt Collins, Wynn Thorne, Ryan, David Bassick, Richard Ayers, Lonnie Hanson, Lecker LeCool, The Ministry of Peculiarities, and Jan Budman. Hey, we're always on the lookout for community partners who are up for working out special deals for our backers. Hit me up at noah@noproscenium.com for details. Now, I'm going to give you an audio program note here. And the order of the show is, first it's Carey talking about Earth Edition LA, and then it is Sarah and Katie talking about Van Helsing's Dracula. We actually recorded both of these interviews on Thursday, which for me is today, and you might be listening to this on Friday. And for some reason, we couldn't get our usual system in Zencastr to work for Carey's interview. So we had to rely upon Zoom. So the audio quality is not all it could be cracked up to be. It also meant that we had, before we started recording, kind of a frustrating 10 minutes of trying to get everything to work. So I'm a little off my game, and that made Carey be a little off her game. But let me tell you, we get into it, and I'm really excited about what's going on the campus. And it's a good conversation once we kind of shake off the cobwebs of having to switch technological platforms. And that, my friends, is the reality of making a podcast in 2023. And now, without further ado, let's get into the show. If you're listening to this the weekend the episode drops, and I do hope you are for this reason, if nothing else, Earth Edition, a festival of eco-consciousness, is getting underway on the campus of CalArts in Valencia, California. This is a 10-day-long event that seeks to counter the catastrophic storytelling surrounding the environmental crisis and foster imagination to envision and prototype new eco-outcomes. It will play host to live performances, workshops, site-specific installations, immersive environments, and armchair conversations with over 50 artists and community-based organizations. Joining us now is Carey Lovelace, founder of Visions 2030, producers of the festival, and a CalArts alum and advisor to CalArts Center for New Performance. Carey, thanks for taking a beat during the run-up to the festival to talk with us.
Oh, Noah, thanks so much for having me here. I'm so excited to talk about this event that we're staging at CalArts.
Yeah, so I came onto campus for the start of the year faculty meeting and School of Theater orientation, and I was greeted last week by the sight of 3 domes being built right next to the parking lot on the soccer field. I thought, what is going on here? Carey, what is going on there?
Well, we are staging Earth Edition, a festival of eco-consciousness, and it's, as you said, a 10-day festival that will contain a multitude of experiences and immersive environments. Its point being to shift consciousness around climate.
So I think it's safe to say, with the particular year we've been having, but also just the past 5 years worth of extreme weather events and fire seasons, that it's getting hard not to feel a sense of doom about the environment, unless you're one of those people who's just completely ignoring what's going on around them, which I think a lot of people are. So what is the angle here with Visions 2030, with this idea of changing perspective, changing narrative around this crisis that's here, that we're living in now?
Well, we call it a festival of eco-optimism, and I'm the producer of the event. Is an initiative called Visions 2030. And at Visions 2030, we're about using the creative imagination to create new models and new paradigms for society. And we ask, what do you want the future to look like? And we believe that the imagination itself is something that can shift. Consciousness is an agent for social change, for global change. And we've done all sorts of events and gatherings, online, offline, getting people to look toward the future. We're a future-oriented initiative, call ourselves an organism. And we were looking at climate, and as you said, obviously there's something that has to be changed. There's we're faced with all sorts of dire circumstances, but the single narrative that we have is this drumbeat of negative data. So, all we get is, kind of fear-based facts. We get a lot of facts. We get a lot of information. The purpose being to change, to motivate us to action. But often at the same time, we're noticing that events aren't changing that quickly, and we wonder why. And our belief is that it may be because, we never ask the question, what do we want to move towards? What are we trying to achieve as a country, as a world, as a human species? We have done incredible things. We fly in the air, we, go to the moon, we've cured diseases, and we actually have the tools and means to solve the crisis that we're in, but we're not utilizing them, or we're not taking advantage of what we have. And so we were asking why, and using the ethos behind Visions 2030, what we believed was, what we began to see was that we were wondering if the negative narrative itself was creating a sense of overwhelm, creating a sense of disempowerment, and kind of stopping people in their tracks. So we were wondering, what if we created a gathering where we presented solutions, where we showed people the amazing things that are out there that are happening? And what if we asked people themselves to imagine, what is your ideal eco-future? Where would you like to move? Because each one of us, in a way, would have a different image of what that eco-future would be. So that was the premise behind this event. And then I would also say, I know that you're interested in immersive environments, and to me, the idea of experience is so much more powerful than information. Information is important, but it's through sensory experiences, through emotional experiences, that I believe true and deep change happens. So we aim to create a variety of types of immersive environments that are all over the campus of CalArts to lead people through, to create a sense of possibility, but also to get them to imagine, where do they want to move.
You have a lot of artists working on this project, dozens, and there's filmmakers and activists. Like, the list, it's all on the website, and the list goes on pretty heavily. And I was coming down from the classroom I'm in these days, and ran into one of the artists, and we had a conversation about the installation he was putting, which was like not quite like the farthest away from the dome you could possibly be, but pretty much on the other side of campus. So there's stuff kind of peppering all over. When gathering these artists, are these works that are things that are already in existence? Is this material that you've commissioned with a particular, kind of set of injunctions for creating experiences, for getting folks to interact? Or was this a process of curating interactive pieces that on the environment that you had already found out in the world?
Well, this event, Earth Edition, was put together by members of the initiative Visions 2030. So it's a multinodal event. So different members of our team kind of curated or developed different aspects of our of this event, of this festival. So we have a very talented curator, Vera Pedikova, who gathered together works, artists that she identified. Her desire was to create an intersectional gathering of artists, but the whole idea was artists who were dealing with solution-oriented work. There are a lot of artists doing kind of what you might call eco art, that again is like, painting a picture of the crises we face. But these were artists that were the mandate was to find artists who are creating solution-oriented arts. We have all sorts of amazing people like Lauren Bond, who's kind of, diverting the LA River to cleanse the water and to deliver clean water to, all areas of LA. We have Ruben Ochoa, who's organized food carts all over LA, vendors. We've got Betty Beaumont, who's worked in the field of eco art for many, many years. We've got the members of Crenshaw Dairy Mart, who are building something called the Abolition Pod, which is a space for healing and for mental health cleansing. They weren't able to build a pod there, but there are kind of plans of things that they plan to do all over the country, of these spaces for people to gather and and a safe space to gather. The space itself has plants by local growers in the LA area. So there's all sorts of different types of artists doing installations, both site-specific installations on the campus around CalArts, but also in galleries inside the CalArts structure.
What is giving you hope in the eco space right now? To kind of come back to that theme of, it feels like, the prevailing sense of doom is dominating the conversation, and I know the festival is designed to cut against that current. But what points are you seeing that maybe those of us who are looking through the glass darkly aren't seeing?
Well, I mean, I think in any phenomenon in life, in any event in life, life is complex. So there's always, difficult things and there's always positive things. So, and the point is for us in the world of climate is, how do you make change? How do you bring change? And in my experience, you bring change when you have hope and a sense of direction and a sense you want to aim towards. So you can take any like event and say, oh my God, everything's falling apart. But that's not really it can be motivating, sometimes like, the house is on fire, let's get out of the house. But it also can be disempowering when it feels so overwhelming. So it's not a question of like, what gives you hope, but it's a question of empowering people to find hope. So I would just say in terms of hope, there are discoveries happening all around us that, as I said, could clear the air, clear the water. They could create sustainable communities. They could create an equitable society. And there are people working on that everywhere. It's a question of seeing that, bring those people together, and getting people to believe as a force that we can move forward. Like, in the 60s, I happened to be around in the 60s, and there was, you could see the force of collective action, like how powerful that is. And, I feel sometimes that we're in such a capitalistic time. In so many ways, I think there's something really powerful about capitalism, but it also can create, I think that capitalism profits in some ways off of fear and anxiety. And I feel like sometimes we're a victim to being manipulated by a negative, narrative that's fed to us because it, creates clicks on social media. So I feel like I want to, spread the word of, like free yourself of that and see what the world really is, which is full of hope.
I think a lot about the tenor of the culture and how it's changed, and particularly around environmental issues. And sometimes I feel, and I'd love your perspective on this. Sometimes I feel like, I guess where I'm sitting right now, like I'm going to be 50 in a couple of years, something I don't like to say, for all kinds of reasons, but it's true. We're going to be, and I remember being, middle school or late elementary, and being aware of Al Gore being sort of, for a hot second, the sort of face of the environmental movement. And that period happened both before he was vice president and like after he had, after 2000 happened, with An Inconvenient Truth. And it felt like, in the 80s when I was a kid, it felt like there was this moment that maybe that was when we could have done something, and then like a swing and a miss. And just the way in which there've been these kind of like rhythms back and forth of like people coming together to create change, and then sort of the system of profit, kind of pushing back against that and be like, oh no, we're going to make some money here. So you can only change so much, or putting the onus on, people to take individual action when systemic change is kind of the thing that's going to have the broader impact. Is that how you read the room, or you read the state of things from a different angle, from maybe a wider perspective, having seen how things were in the 60s? Like, I think sometimes people my age can romanticize that era and think that things moved a lot quicker, and that the social change movements had a faster impact than maybe they did.
Well, I mean, I just want to go back to, there's a lot of questions in there.
Yeah, sorry. It's a lot. It's kind of this, it's this fireball to me, right?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think the thing the 60s were a romantic time. There was a lot of change that happened fast, and then people thought the change had happened, and then they went to, to make money and stuff like that. And what we learned was, you have to keep working at change. It's like, what the arc of now
the arc of the universe bends towards justice, right? But that doesn't
Islam,
right?
But it bends, and the Islam part is really the key part, because what we didn't realize in the 60s was just that it may come quickly, but then you have to keep working at it. But I feel like, I think the thing that's important to talk about is that we can make change at any time. Like, we collectively can make change right this second. And it's just a question of like believing that and working together to do that. And I think what's really powerful to me about this festival, I was just, I want to talk a little bit about the Lumisphere, which are the domes that you saw, the green domes that are on the soccer field. I mean, the point of that, we worked with this amazing team called Minds Over Matter, and they specialize in immersive projections. They've done projections on the Vatican, on the Empire State Building. They sold their inner software to MSG during this immense $2 billion dome in Las Vegas. And we collaborated with them to create this immersive environment that leads you. It's almost like a guided meditation, but it's visual, sort of to dream your ideal eco-future. And then in the first dome, you're oriented about where we are, the challenges we face, and there's kind of a big glowing kind of campfire-like globe structure that sort of talks about our challenges, but then our possibilities. Then you move into a second dome, which is a huge immersive sphere where you lean back and you're just surrounded by like this just powerful abstract imagery that takes you on a journey, kind of blasts you off into the universe and gets you into your imagination to dream your particular ideal eco-future. And then it's like an opium den without the opium. It's like kind of amazing. And then in the third dome, through AI, with a tablet, you translate your ideal eco-future into this huge LED image through a series of prompts. You kind of like put in the prompts, and then your ideal eco-future as a visual image is rendered on these screens that are there in a gallery and that you actually have on your phone. So it's from your dream into seeing it physically, and that in itself, it opens up people's hearts. I mean, it's amazing to see. The mayor of Santa Clarita came, and he was like, kind of, oh yes. And by the end, when we were in the gallery doing these LED images with these tablets, he was just, amazed, because it's like we have so much inside of us with our imagination, and it's the imagination that does create rocket ships and solutions, scientific solutions. So it opens people up to those possibilities. And then there's, after these domes, if you want to, there's another structure called the mentoring tent, where if you want to find out how to take your eco dreams and translate them into reality, you can go there and meet with a guide who will, sit with you, ask you what you experienced in the dream domes, and then help you develop action steps. And there's a database there for you to trace through resources you can hook up with. There are field experts there you can consult with to see if they can help you, guide you on your way. There are armchair chats with, Karenagor is one of the people who's going to be beaming in to talk with us, but all sorts of the Sierra Club, like all sorts of people from all over, particularly Southern California, but all over the country, kind of there to show you different options. If you want to take action, this is the way to go. And then a way to hook up with other people who share similar interests. So in that way, I feel like it's a way of joining with others with similar interests and of opening up your sense of possibilities and your own sense of, the way you in particular can make a difference and the direction that you in particular can move.
I love this idea and how this execution sounds of getting folks into a state where they're engaging with their imagination, they're engaging with the ability to sort of touch upon possibilities that maybe they like have set aside or haven't thought of in a while. That there's something in being built to sort of bring that forth from within them, and then there's a place to land to actualize it, so that what has been inspired and incepted doesn't just then just kind of float off into the ether. That there's a next
Exactly.
step.
That there's a next step
Um,
because often with climate, we're given this, terrible news, but then there's no like, well, what do you do? You know what I mean? Like build a bunker. I mean, you're never given the steps to take, like what, okay, like get a rowboat. I mean, I don't know. So, I mean, and that's what we want to give people is the steps to take for the future.
Carey, it already from the outside looks tremendous. Knowing what's going on the inside, it sounds tremendous. And what's great is that folks have 10 days if they're here in the Southland to make their way up and check it out and maybe get their perspective on what's happening in the environment realigned here and to start thinking about the future in a different way. So
Can I just
yeah.
add a couple of things that we did not talk about? Because
Oh, sure.
there's also an eco expo there where you can see different innovations and um, advances like on the ground grassroots advances that people are doing to also awaken your imagination. There's a sustainable sound stage with cool DJs and bands playing. There's a Zukunft garden, a garden of the future, a tech garden of the future that's based on the new trend of solar punk, which is the opposite of cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is dystopian and negative. Solar punk is like, what if tech and nature could combine to create a really positive future? And then there's even family activities like goat yoga there. So it's like a
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. You said,
cornucopia.
did you say goat yoga?
I did say goat yoga. So if you want to come and hang out with a goat and see another way of relating to nature, there it is. There are all sorts of different family possibilities there, so you can bring your kids and really have a fantastic time.
And that was not a condemning noting of the goat yoga. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't hallucinating
Exactly. No, I
saying
know.
goat
Yes,
yoga.
yeah. I
It was
love
like
goat yoga.
I was walking down the street yesterday. I had just turned the corner in Burbank off of a Christmas ad shoot. So they had completely decked out a house for Christmas. That was absurd enough. And I turned the corner and then there was a tortoise, a very large tortoise, just kind of making a beeline for me as soon as he saw me. And for a hot second, I said to myself, am I hallucinating?
I know.
And I wasn't. Someone's pet tortoise,
Yeah.
15 years old and huge.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
and I think he thought I was broccoli for a second, which is why he was
Yeah.
heading great alacrity. I think the tortoise was hallucinating.
Right.
So there, somebody was. It turns out it
Right.
wasn't me. Um, but it's it's wonderful this is happening. I'm very excited. I'm glad I get to duck into it.
Yeah.
And I hope everyone who's here in the Southland listening to the show takes a beat and heads on up and checks out what's over there right off the McBean Parkway exit in uh, in Valencia, Santa Clarita. Just get off of McBean Parkway, take a right, and you're there. You're right there where the domes are. So, Carey, thanks for taking the time to speak with me
Thanks
today.
so much, Noah. It's been great.
All right.
And come on down.
Joining us now are Katie Rediger and Sarah Mann, the directors of the upcoming Van Helsing's Dracula from Madmann's Playground here in Los Angeles, billed as a poetically sapphic interpretation of the Gothic story Dracula with a three-course meal. Katie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Noah. Thank you for having me.
And Sarah, happy spooky season.
Happy spooky season to you too, Noah.
All right, let's start with the basics. Sarah, your company, Madmann's Playground, is a circus arts dinner theater. So how does that shape Van Helsing's Dracula?
Yeah, so I myself have the background of a circus performer and dancer, and decided I wanted to create a circus experience in Los Angeles that is not your typical circus experience. I wanted it to be a fully produced show with a narrative that was then told through circus arts. So I reached out to Katie initially years ago at this point, to see if she would be interested in creating a vampire circus story with me. And not sure how I was going to feature her, but wanted her to be essentially the host of the evening. And as we started to kind of spin ideas around and talk about it, we decided to bring our friend Corinne Evans on board. And then I decided, I was like, all right, it's going to be a Dracula story. So where do we go from here? Katie, who do we think you should be in the story? Are you just a bystander? Are you just telling the story? Or are you actually a character in it? And as we started to, develop the idea, and the three of us having multiple conversations, decided Katie would be Van Helsing and she would be recounting her experience with the Countess Dracula. So we decided to make it a female lead show. And then as Katie and Corinne further developed the storyline, decided to make it an entirely female cast circus show, which is rare in the circus world to see a full female circus. And so just, looking at the story as the base, and how do we use circus to portray what is happening in Katie's narration, to make sure that the story comes through. So that's kind of how that came to be.
So, Katie, along with being familiar to those in LA who've seen Spy Brunch's immersive safe house shows, you were in both of those. Another of your aspects is poet and performance artist. Which aspects of you are showing up here in Van Helsing's Dracula?
Oh, both actually. I'm really excited about this project in particular because this is definitely the first time that my poetry is going to be showcased and fully acted out by myself also on stage in a theatrical play kind of setting. The dialogue for the show is entirely written in my poetic verse, and my character is essentially the only character that will be speaking for this show. So Van Helsing is the audience's way into the story for this. And as they were saying, like the host of the evening, we're kind of taking the audience on this journey with Van Helsing through my poetry, which is so exciting and terrifying for me, but I really can't wait to share it.
Now, with circus and dinner theater and some of the visuals and the video I've seen of the show as it's in development, there's a lot of spectacle going on here. But I also know, Katie, I know from your experience working in immersive and some of the performance art you've done, you're definitely aware of the magic circle effect and what happens when you start to bring the audience into the world of the show. So, how are you incorporating this? Because it can be tough particularly with the dinner format. To make the world kind of permeable, because that balance between people are eating and then there's like performance going on, but like actually being in the world. So how are you meeting that challenge?
Yeah, so it's interesting to go back to Safe House 77 and that experience where we did have also people eating in the audience coming in and eating in that show as well. But in a different setting, a more casual setting, not so much a formal dinner setting. We're really trying to make the audience feel like they've been invited to this special event. Not that they're just coming to see a show, but they've been invited to this very special event where they are going to be serenaded for the evening, and they get to eat as well. We are breaking up the dinner service and the actual scene work. So there will be dinner service won't necessarily be happening in the middle of a scene. You're not going to be missing a scene because dinner is being served. But
good. Or the reverse, trying to chew something and have someone emote directly in your face, which I've had happen a couple of times, and I'm like, this doesn't go well together.
Yeah, it can get to be a little bit much.
Yeah, this filet mignon and your monologue are not well paired. Perhaps you could try some wine instead.
We're definitely giving people some room to breathe and some room to eat. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sarah, you were just about to say something.
Oh, no, you're good. Yeah, kind of bouncing off what Katie was saying is, we're definitely trying to set it up as the audience has been invited by Van Helsing to this dinner event. And so Van Helsing, will be interacting with the audience throughout the duration of the show, speaking specifically to certain audience members. And then Katie and I met doing the Toledo show, which is a show where the performers move around the audience the entire time, primarily. And so we're taking that form as well, kind of like at a traditional circus where the clowns would be in the audience kind of messing with people. Our clowns, for lack of a better word for them, or Dracula's harem, are going to be moving through the audience throughout the show. Dracula will be moving through the audience throughout the show. So simultaneously, while yes, there is this dinner service, like Katie said, the scenes are broken up into acts. The dinner service will take place between the acts, and you'll have that chance to, enjoy this 3-course Romanian style cuisine as if you are in, the world of Dracula. So yeah, there's various ways that we're incorporating the immersive component, even though it is a sit-down meal.
It's very much a sensory experience. And one of the things that I love about immersive and what I've experienced in what I've performed and also what I've gone to see is that there's so many varying degrees of immersion that can happen, right? And with this show, it is immersive. We're not necessarily going to give the audience as much agency as, to stand up and get on stage and really get into the scene work per se with us, but they are brought into the world, acknowledged within the world, and they are an integral part of the story and the culmination of the story as well.
I love that you can identify with specificity where you've dialed the audience in on there. Because there is a range of agency that can happen in immersive shows. But if you've so long as you've done the homework of casting the audience and you know who they are in the world, then it gets a lot easier to take them on whatever particular form of journey it might be. And that's, yeah, just I'm not everyone comes onto the show and is able to articulate it cleanly. So like, I'm just like, and I'm in the middle of like teaching this stuff for the first time to like students. So it's like really on my mind about like who's got the language and who doesn't, out there in the wide immersive verse. Something that I haven't caught, I will at some point. It's like, it's almost bucket list for me at this point. And something, Sarah, that you mentioned, and that's where you and Katie met, is the Toledo show. And I've caught clips on Insta for years now. So I've got a bit of a sense of what it is. But for those who haven't even done that much, could you give a sense of what the vibe is, and particularly how that might echo a bit in what you're doing here?
Oh, that is a tough question. The Toledo show is a very hard thing to explain. I will give it my best shot. So Toledo his background is as a dancer, but he has transitioned into a singer storyteller. The majority of his show comes from a space of improvisation where the musicians are improvising. He is storytelling kind of in the form of Tom Waits. where part of it is kind of spoken storytelling, sung. Some of it has melody, some of it's more just like this raspy smoker's voice. And then the dames, as he calls them, his dancers, performers, are acting out whatever the story is that he's telling. And that is also improv based because nobody knows what's going to happen until the song starts. So I joined the show as a dancer. Katie came in as a poet. And she does some dancing as well when she's doing her performance art with him. But it's a really amazing space artistically. I think it's a little daunting when you first join the show, but as you start to kind of find your footing, the ability to sort of improv on the spot, not knowing what song you're getting, not knowing who else is performing with you, what's going to happen in the space. And because, there's a few different versions of the show, but we're instructed to kind of move throughout the space. And if there's an audience member, like, lay on them, who cares? They're there. Interact with them, use them as part of your, speak directly to them. And Katie's, when Katie's doing her art, she, pinpoints people in the audience to direct the words to. As a dancer, you figure out, okay, who can I dance on? Who can I, grab their face as I'm moving? We're not going to be quite as up close and personal with Van Helsing's Dracula because it's a new format, trying to kind of get our footing. But the Toledo show is something it's very hard to explain. You do kind of have to experience it. It's a little jazzy, sometimes it's funky, sometimes it's really just melodic and twinkly, for lack of a better word. I don't know, Katie, do you have any other thing you could add to that?
Yeah, I mean, Toledo also, because it's so heavily improv based, he also will, see people in the audience that he wants to make the song about right now, and brings the audience members into it in that way sometimes too, which is really cool.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, he's a magnifier of really interesting artistic people. I joined that show in 2017 with my poetry, like Sarah said. And I didn't really know what my artistic voice was at that point in time. I went to CalArts. I was an actor, and I didn't know that the poetry I'd been writing all my life was something that I could make into an experience for other people, a live show. And I really developed my voice on that stage, which was great. Over several years, I had the opportunity to do that, to workshop my now artistic identity on that stage. And now it's getting a chance to be completely fully realized in Van Helsing's Dracula as both my poetic artistic self and my actor artistic self. I'm getting to morph both of those things into this incredible show to share with other people and give them an experience that hopefully they'll remember forever.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Katie, because I definitely, I saw you as a poet with Toledo show way before I ever saw you as an actress with Safe House 77.
Yeah.
And, I obviously approached you to work on this show because of your poetry and because of the performer that I'd seen you be with Toledo. And then to see what you could do outside of that with Safe House 77 or with any of the other kind of immersive stuff I've seen you do, it's cool to be able to have the opportunity to have your words shape an immersive show. It's something I've been thinking about for a long time. So it's cool to be able to showcase that.
Why vampires? Why Dracula?
Because they're sexy. Yeah, so I think similar to Katie's journey of finding her artistic voice, I think I truly found my artistic voice through Toledo, which is a more sensual show. And I really liked the idea of having kind of an adult circus show. And so when I was trying to figure out like what would this first thing be, I was reading all sorts of stories and watching all sorts of movies and shows and just kind of looking everywhere that I could for inspiration. And I came across the BBC 3-part Dracula show. And when I saw this BBC 3-parter, they had Van Helsing was a nun. And it was the first time I'd ever seen Van Helsing depicted as a female. And Dracula is a shapeshifter. And so it naturally kind of made sense to me to have Dracula be this aerial contortionist, sort of able to do multiple things as a circus performer. And I just loved the idea of having a female Van Helsing and a female Dracula because I haven't seen it done before. And at the time when I approached Katie, I said, I think I know what our show's going to be. I said, I think it's going to be Dracula. And she at the time goes, oh my God, I'm writing vampire poetry. Like it was this just perfect moment of she was in a vampire space and I was inspired by this BBC 3-parter. And I said, vampires are sexy. Like, why not make this kind of sensual Dracula show? And that's how that came to be.
Yeah, I'm a horror lover myself, and also have just always kind of had a thing for vampires. And yeah, I was quite literally in the middle of writing a poem that was inspired by some sort of sexy vampire interaction. And so it was really serendipitous. It was perfect timing. And I was already in that mindset. I already had those kinds of creative juices flowing, and we got to work.
This is making me want to ask both of you if you've caught up with the AMC version of Interview that was running last year.
I did.
And I think maybe it's even in its second season right now, because I only fell off by accident. I think it's because I was like watching it through like Spectrum and not AMC proper. But Katie, you said you did.
Yeah, I definitely want my boyfriend and I binged that show. It was really good. I actually really enjoyed the remake. I was into it. I don't actually know if the next season is out myself either. I don't have AMC anymore. We literally got AMC just to watch that show.
Yeah, they moved over to Max, but I dropped Max after Succession because they started calling it Max and they didn't call it HBO Max anymore. I refused to buy something called Max. I was just like, no, you can't make me. Although there's a bunch of stuff on there that I do want to watch. It's getting a little frustrating. But having been someone who like read like the first couple of books and who was like really, really into vampires in the 90s. Like that was a core part of my identity. Like I was so happy with what they did with that show because it was fun for them to take it as like, we're going to reinvent this. We're going to question the narrative. And then they also got freaking Eric Bogosian like in there. And I'm just like, oh, what? So yeah, glad to see it sitting. And that was Noah's vampire moment. Sorry.
Everyone has one. Everyone has a vampire moment. So
oh yeah, there's like I used to think, I don't think I think this anymore, but maybe it is starting to happen again. Actually, you know what? I think it's happening again, and maybe it's happening in AMC. That there was a natural cycle of our culture was the eternal switching of roles in dominance in pop culture between vampires and zombies as to which type of undead were we focusing on. And vampires had their ascendance from the mid 80s deep into the 90s, and then kind of like zombies came back around at the turn of the century, and then just kind of like held on for so long.
Yeah, you're right.
And I was annoyed because like I'm much more of a vampire person, but I also think it like speaks to what cultural anxieties we're manifesting, right? Like vampires are really ascendant, particularly during the AIDS crisis, because of all of our anxiety around sex, all of our and then there was also, a lot of stuff about class consciousness gets roped into vampires, and the Wall Street, blood sucking, Brooks Brothers suits guys, like all of that was there. And so the vampire was everything for Gen X at that point in time. And then, yeah, zombies, man. There was just too many zombies for too long, but it feels like vampires are making their comeback. So
it really does.
It definitely does.
It really does. And I feel like when we, 2 years ago, when we first started throwing this idea around, maybe not as much, but then all of a sudden, I'm like, the closer we get to the show, the more and more I see Dracula, vampire, like just everywhere. It's popping up everywhere right now. And I'm like, what is this energy, this like surging energy around vampires that's all of a sudden happening like right around the time that we're like getting ready to launch this show? It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think it's more than just you noticing it because you're primed to see vampires as you're doing the show. Like, I do think there's something culturally happening, which I'm grateful for as someone who likes vampires more than he likes zombies.
Absolutely.
but also in that I do feel it is linked to these specific kind of cultural subconscious stirrings about where are our anxieties, what are we concerned about, and that in the back of our brains we're working on it. Yes. And that dual thing of like infection and class power, and so yeah, I don't know. Sorry. I'm just
no, not at all. Don't be sorry. That's a great point.
Yeah, so some people know I can talk about vampires like all day. It's almost a disturbing trait. And particularly I can do it all day. What does that mean? That I can talk about them all day and not all night? No, anyway.
We should fix that. Come to the show. We'll fix that.
Was that an offer? I don't know if I'm ready for that. Anyway, we'll negotiate later. Okay, speaking of coming to the show, I gotta dismount before I lose my immortal soul here. So, where, when, how, but we all know why. Vampires. Where, when, how with Van Helsing's Dracula, for those listening at home.
Katie, you want to answer that one?
We are opening October 21st in Van Nuys at the Vatican Banquet Hall. Our tickets are already on sale right now on Eventbrite. You can also go to www.madmansplayground.com and purchase tickets through the link in the website as well. Sarah, if there's anything else that I missed that you want to add to it?
No, I think you got it all. We have a 4-night run. Yeah, taking a break over Halloween to let all of the other Halloween stuff happen, and then we'll be back the first 3 weekends of November. So if you missed the first one, you get to extend your Halloween experience into November.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Katie and Sarah, thank you so much for joining me on the show this week, and looking forward to seeing it all come together.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Once again, I want to thank Carey and Sarah and Katie for being our guests on the show this week. Check the show notes for the relevant links to their work. You can find some other stuff in the show notes, a link to the call sheet. There's a fun listing in there right now. The Speakeasy Society here in Southern California has announced casting for a new project that's going to be down in Costa Mesa this winter. So give a gander to that. Speaking of winter, because, it's the beginning of spooky season, so it's time to think about Christmas. Camp Christmas is coming back in Denver. So if you were wondering what you should be doing during the holidays, maybe swing through Denver and check out Camp Christmas as it returns. Always happy to see Alani and company back at it year after year. This week did see me skip everything immersive this week. I fell behind the count because of the class. As I mentioned in the interview with Carey, It was just over a week ago that we had faculty meeting and orientation for the students up at CalArts. I'm a professor now. I only say that because one of the students wrote in Professor Nelson, and I'm just like, okay, well, it's happened now. I've crossed that threshold, and this fall's going to be. There's probably going to be a few more disruptions in this schedule. Hopefully not for the podcast. I feel like obsessively compelled to get the podcast out, but there are a number of things going on. So one, this CalArts class, and what's really cool is like, as I try to distill all this stuff down, to communicate not with students who are uninformed. Like, that was one of the rad things, was that some of the students had seen shows that I thought like no one else had saw. So there's like, yeah, Fringe 2019, I saw this thing, or 2018, and I was like, they're like, no one saw that. And that was absolutely rad. So there's a common language there. But part of the job is to, give this all some structure. And that's making me look at things differently, to try to communicate it in a different way. And you're going to see some of that get reflected here in the show. And I think that's going to start, it's going to be a good thing for all of us. But I'm also, in addition to the class every week, I'm doing like a fair amount of travel suddenly. So at the end of this month, Lucid Immersive in Singapore is bringing me out to talk at the Lucid Immersive Summit. And that's on the 29th of September. I leave on the 27th. It takes that long to get there. And then there's the whole like international dateline thing. Melinda Lau is one of the creatives over there, and of Whisper Lodge, our friends. This is going to be a really exciting trip. There's a lot of cool folks on the docket. I'm going to get a chance to see a team lab for the first time, which is very exciting. And I'm also in this weird state of, constantly having to shill for the Patreon for the podcast to keep my life going, literally, because it's getting, every month now is this crunch. It's very stressful. And at the same time, people are like flying me halfway across the planet. It's really weird. So as I do this travel, maybe, or as I'm teaching the class, some people might go like, no, it's got it made. We can just drop Patreon. No, if anything, it's getting more complicated and difficult and both awesome and scarier all at the same time. I'm putting together a talk there. Obviously, that's why they're bringing me, right? And that too is again interesting to start distilling down kind of where we are right now, because I think it's really easy to look at some of the projects, and I think we're going to have like a team speak conversation about this, but it's easy to look at all the projects that are closing, that are like these big swings, and just get aggressively negative about the state of things. And I feel like I'm already like past that point. Like, I was depressed like 6 months ago about that. And now I'm like, oh yeah, cost of doing business, a little bit, but also there's a degree to which, there's assumptions about what the world wants, or what the market will bear, or what stories we need right now, what experiences we need right now. And those things aren't always all aligned with each other. And we're still in this space. This is the thing. This is the thing that's ironic to me. As I'm seeing folks in other parts of the entertainment industry, other parts of the arts infrastructure, also freak out about the way things are at the moment, and that so much is not working. I am reminded, and I think I talked about this maybe a little bit last week, or talked about it with somebody, reminded of the fact that we have gone through this profound change as a society that honestly we don't really acknowledge, right? Like, we're very good at ignoring the changes that the pandemic has wrought, the losses that it's created, and the different weights that it puts into our decision making on a day-to-day basis. And the one thing I do know is that people need to connect with each other still, and not electronically. And they seek that out. They risk sometimes everything for it. And there are few things more rewarding. One of those things that is equally rewarding is getting a good book and a cup of coffee and going away from everybody and having nothing but the squirrels and the birds as your friends. But aside from needing that part of yourselves filled as well, this drive to connect, this drive to have a place to do so, is increasingly what the core value of this work appears to be to me. And connection that is not just mundane, but is novel, unique, is a peak experience, or is something that feels like getting to see on the other side of the veil, something novel about the way the world works. Those are some generic words. Sorry, this rant is kind of petering out a bit. All of this remains this glorious mystery, and that's what's great about it. This is something I was thinking about last night as I get into, what I'm going to talk to folks in Singapore about. As we professionalize, as investment money comes in, as folks look to turn what they do into, businesses that can be replicated, we need to remember that experience is not product, that it will not be commodified, that attempts to commodify it cut directly against the grain of what makes it valuable. This is about creating unique moments in time. You can create a really good machine at making those, right? A process that creates that, then you're doing it right. But that's different from making something that's just going to cookie cutter stamp out the same product over and over and over again. So gonna be meditating on that for a bit as that coalesces into something. I got all of a week before I got to deliver the PowerPoint. So along with the assignments I gotta devise and the articles I gotta write and the admin, endless admin for everything and everyone. All right. I'm doing this Friday morning. I haven't had a coffee yet. I'm going to go do that. Sorry, I just scratched the mic. I'm not going to retake that, so apologies. Let's do the end of the show. The associate producer of this podcast is Parker Sella. Music for No Proscenium is by Chris Porter of the Speakeasy Society and Solar the Podcast. Special thanks to Siobhan O'Loughlin for voicing our intro. The No Pro podcast is my fault. I'm Noah Nelson. And until next time, I'll see you at the show.